So I think we have now a panel where we discuss how we get somehow back on the growth path for the residential in particular, and also C&I solar. And we will talk with Luis, John, Ali, and Jan. So everyone, please switch on your cameras, and then we continue. Okay, cool. So maybe let's so as a sort of icebreaker, if we still need it, but let's begin maybe with a high level view. So we, especially when we look now at John's presentation, who went through different phases, and we could see there was already the first peak 15 years ago in Europe, which went then down, and then now the judgment is still out where we're heading. Now that we're sort of stagnating, maybe slightly even decreasing this year, and mostly due to distributed solar. So what are, and everyone just brief, what are the most critical lessons? So we had to learn as all of us in the solar and maybe also storage industry during the energy crisis, and how these lessons are shaping the path forward for the residential and the C&I segment. Maybe Jan first, with your policy background.
Yeah, I found this question challenging because the energy crisis was such a boom for the residential and the C&I segments. So what I took away is that the need for diversification, especially in the when the boom ebbed out, that focusing on one specific market segment might be challenging with a view of a very dynamic market conditions.
Okay. Who wants next? John?
Yeah, I think the lesson is that the path to growth is not linear. That the energy crisis was exceptionally high prices. They couldn't last. And if you look at what's driving both solar and storage, solar is driven by high prices. So when prices fall, it doesn't have so much of a driver. Storage is driven by volatility. And we're sort of navigating the balance between those two. That if they went hand in hand would be perfect, but we tend to swing as an industry from one to the other, but it comes back again.
Okay. Ali?
I think you're mute, Ali.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very interesting, Michael, both back to Jan and Jan's comments, because two things that I have written here is the diversification and decentralization of the sources. And as I said in my presentation, diversify not just with regard to the markets, but also with regard to the segments and the technologies, back to just what Jan said, back to storage and to PV. And also the prices. That's also extremely important for me. The electricity prices must act as a very normal PV development catalyzer. And based on different external shocks that we are experiencing, back to this energy crisis, these prices are could be externally or artificially manipulated. And in some cases, we might not be ready to handle that. In this recent case, we had this pull forward effect of a lot of PV being shoved into a very limited period of time installed, and then now it's slowly steaming off. And this is partly affecting the confidence of the players in the market. So back again to what Jan said, both diversify and keep an eye on the prices, electricity prices.
So what's your lesson, Luis? I think for you, I think the energy crisis was indeed the boom phase. You were profiting, prices were high, actually demand was super high, and that has flipped. We are in an oversupply situation, and of course the market dynamic is completely different.
Yeah, of course. So obviously diversification is important, but I think at a country level, at a regional level, security of supply is as important in the sense that the energy needs to be produced locally, not on a centralized level, on a distributor, but also at a country level. This is something that renewable energy can allow you when you are dependent on imports, for example, which is something that the countries like the UK specifically were affected by. This is something that definitely needs to be corrected.
Yeah. Okay, I think my personal learning was actually always to really always see again how quickly people can also forget, because as you say, energy security is so important, and I think we're living in a very fragile moment of time. Actually, there's a war very close. I think. Tusk recently said, I think Russia might test NATO in 2027, and people are, and many governments think more and more about gas when they think about stability. So I think this is somewhat what I still don't understand, I have to admit. But okay, so it is as it is. So let's talk about the market developments and maybe the demand side of dynamics. So several of you have shown that the demand in many EU markets is stagnating. I think there are a few that are increasing, like France, although there's also some anti-solar dynamics going on behind the scenes. Not only behind the scenes, I think if the recent vote in the parliament would have turned out differently, I think the French market would also be pretty much in a crisis. But so what do you see actually when you look at residential rooftop PV? What structural or policy-driven shifts are really most urgently needed to reverse this downward trend for especially for the rooftop segment, but also the other way around, that we boost CNI much more, because it's much more potential there, because it's to tap. I don't know who wants to start first. Luis, maybe?
Yeah, I can start. So from my point of view, and when we talk specifically of solar, we need to understand that sometimes solar is not accessible to everyone, either because of infrastructure or financial reasons. I think practices like balcony or plug-in PV, they're still not allowed in all countries. That's something definitely that should increase. That should enhance the use of solar. It should be positive. For example, in the UK, it's not still allowed. So definitely plug-in or balcony PV. It's a policy that will benefit for sure, and it doesn't require a high investment from the government or tax part. Then you will have as well the new build sector. I think it is good that the new build sector in some countries it is being forced to adopt some sort of renewable technology or efficiency. Most of the time that will go to PV. But the requirements are not very strict. Sometimes you see new build properties with 1 kilowatt, 2 kilowatts of PV, which is good to have PV installed, but we all know that that's not a reasonable capacity to install with the electricity demands that a current household has. So if more, let's say, if the requirements are increased to percentage of the roof or a minimum capacity like 3 that we know that is something within the average of the users of the average that houses are generating, that will definitely be good as well. And also definitely reducing, perhaps more applicable for the commercial part, but definitely reducing or easing the application process to the grid. I'm sure in many countries in Europe that it's complicated to get capacity. The cost of increasing the connections are significant, so most of the time. So definitely easing the process of getting a new connection or upgrading a connection for commercial clients will definitely be something that will positively impact the development of the technology.
Okay, thanks. John?
Yeah, I would just pick up on that new build point and highlight the sort of the trend towards zero bill homes that's gaining traction in GB. As Lou says, if you put 1 kilowatt on a house, it's just ticking a box. It's not really providing value to the homeowner or to the system. If you really design new build homes with sufficient PV, with electrification of heating, with an EV charge point, manage that within the wider grid connection, then you're really thinking about your place within the system. And I think that's much more important than a simple mandate that can be met in a way that doesn't add value.
Okay. Jan, maybe I think you want to take on that also?
Yeah, I think key to accelerate rooftop PV in both segments is the acceleration of electrification. So both heat pumps and EVs. The way that as soon as EVs and heat pumps become a clear consumption site at the building, you start to see more self-consumption, and the business case for PV will be one, less dependent on support, and two, it also opens demand assets for flexibility services, and that basically connects to the second point, is opening of flexibility frameworks in countries, and particularly explicit demand response, so allowing aggregators to participate in electricity markets, but also flexibility services from grid operators, so the TSOs and the DSOs opening up their markets to flexibility, because then you really see the business case taking up quickly. Maybe just the last thing to add is that electrification is not limited to the residential sector, but really also industrial electrification. The heating processes below 500 degrees, which are where electrification is the most effective, combined as well with cooling, of course.
Okay. Ali, your research points showed to this diverging national trends in the deployment. So how can the lagging markets actually learn from the front runners? And the question is, of course, what are front runners? Because some of the front runners are now also somewhat pulling back. Yeah.
I think, Michael, again, because to me, recently, I've really come to realize that everything boils down to the ROI, return of investment in solar PV and storage rollout. Again, number one thing to notice, taking markets like Italy and Germany as samples or examples, is the electricity prices, right? In a recent analysis we did, in a pan-European and North American analysis we calculated the LCOE of solar in different segments, right? Residential, C&I, and utility. And then we had the retail electricity tariffs as well, right? When you subtract the tariffs by the LCOE of solar, you get what we call the net benefit. And there's a very beautiful positive correlation, right, between the volume of installations in a certain market, let's say like Germany, right, with the net benefit of solar storage in that market. Meaning the higher the net benefit in the residential, the higher the volume of installations. And the 4 markets that had the highest net benefit in the residential segment in our analysis were Germany, Switzerland, Denmark, and Italy, right? Meaning the electricity prices in this segment were high, and so leading to the installations in that. segment. So I think managing the electricity prices are important, and this is one of my concerns with all this, renewables that we are installing. This will be mismanaged in the coming years. So I think this is extremely important. So creating some sort of a business model or business case for the residential and CNI consumers. There's another thing is another point is also the funding schemes. We need to pay attention to that as well. Like in Italy, for example, the super bonus is now declining, and in Germany the phase out of the feed-in tariff. So we know that the prices, PV prices, the storage prices are going down, but I think that share of the population in different markets who have the purchasing power, right, could buy storage and PV right now, could also be, losing their purchasing power slowly, and this is their concern as well. So we need to create funding schemes that are targeted to the, let's say, middle class and even lower middle class parts of the society who are the late adopters of the technologies. And with regard to the CNI, Michael, my last point, one thing that is extremely important is that the investment in the CNI is a totally different dynamic from the residential, right? So when a CNI stakeholder is going for a CNI project, it's not 10 kilowatt or 15 kilowatt or 5 kilowatt in the case of smaller like France, or we are talking about megawatts here. So they need to calculate every step, every megawatt that they want to install, and they need to check their performance, quality, reliability, pricing, but also sustainability, ESG, because the system is going to be there for the next 20 years, their investment, and also even the financial status of the manufacturers of that system, right? Whether that system is going to be there in the next 5-10 years, that brand or that manufacturer or not. So this is also very important here. For example, in EUPD, we also worked on brand leadership and sustainability rating, right? Exactly for this purpose, to go, and again, back to what you said, Michael, right? People span of attention. It's extremely important to repeat to them, hey guys, this is the narrative. CNI is improving, but you need to keep in mind that there is all sorts of different dynamics in their investment. So again, to recap, electricity prices are important, and the return of investment or net benefit, the funding schemes, and also the importance of CNI and the important top brands that we need to focus on if you want to roll that out.
Okay. Let's stay a little bit with markets. So I think Jan has shown in his slide deck also that the market is obviously also the rooftop market, and the different segments of the rooftop market are growing. So some more, some less, and not too strong, especially in comparison to utility scale. But so Luis, being in the business now and looking for how to navigate through the somewhat difficult situation we're in right now. So, what do you see actually in terms of residential versus C&I and the different markets in Europe? So, where do you feel actually the boundary conditions are good enough at the moment actually to continue, and maybe let's do it like this.
Yeah. So I think both sectors have potential to grow, but in my opinion, residential will take a larger growth. The reason being because the homeowner now is getting more familiar with the energy consumption. If you look back, let's say 6-8 years ago, the homeowner was just looking into installing PV for a reduction of electricity bill. Now they are more not just thinking of generation, they're thinking more of energy management. We have now the systems are getting complex. It's not just about PV inverter, it's about a heat pump, a battery, an EV charger, an energy management system. And also you have access now to dynamic tariff. In some countries now you have to the flexibility market, so it's another revenue stream. So the homeowner, again, that concept of moving from a consumer to a prosumer, I believe is gonna increase significantly the market when it comes to residential applications. For commercial applications, I think the storage part is unexplored. It's very clear how PV will increase, or commercial buildings, commercial businesses can benefit from PV, but the storage bit is difficult to justify. It's very easy to identify how in a residential system you can use storage and how in the utility scale storage is used, but in the commercial, for a commercial building, it's a case by case. I think as technology improve, bringing DC coupled solutions and bring automation, AI into these solutions, it will generate a better case for commercial building into the adoption of this technology. And now PV and storage go hand by hand. So I think that will also lead to a growth in the market.
Okay. I think I found this one slide also interesting that I believe John showed, where he had for the different European countries actually the different tariff situations. And so when we look at this, also this shift away from feed-in tariffs to market-based mechanisms, I think that the heftiest one is probably now when we saw net metering in the Netherlands, where the market is basically dead at the moment, and at least the solar market, the residential one. So how quickly are you seeing consumers embracing these flexible tariffs, John? Actually, so in Germany, where I live, we have now dynamic tariffs since the beginning of the year. Every utility, and we have around 800 or so of these, have to offer that. So, but are people embracing that, and are they thinking, of course, also from a security point of view, actually, when they think about their expenses, that they directly want to kind of have solar storage as a backup, depending on what's happening, and maybe even use AI as Luis was offering that. So what's happening there?
So dynamic tariffs really reflect the wholesale price at the moment in the main, and we can see consumers with the ability for flexibility are taking to them greater than the mass market. I think we're seeing there's a lot of interest when tariffs are first launched, but it's still a very niche product to pass all of that risk and all of that complexity onto consumers who really don't, in the main, want to engage with the energy market in that level of detail. So one thing we're seeing is now the move away from purely dynamic tariffs to type of use tariffs, where retailers are trying to focus on incentivizing and rewarding behavior for particular types of asset owners. And that may be for solar consuming more when prices are low. It could be for asset owners, if you have a heat pump or an EV, to try and focus consumption at times when it benefits the system. So I think that the dynamic tariff has a place, but it doesn't necessarily attract the mass market. And it requires a level of engagement that goes beyond what most people are willing to devote on a daily basis. So, as Luis highlighted, engaging, or if you can feed the data from a tariff into a system that then can automatically optimize particular assets, that's where we're seeing more and more interest. We're seeing more propositions, both from retailers and flexibility service providers, to optimize automatically and manage that risk. And dynamic tariffs are only one way of getting those signals to consumers.
Okay. And when you talk about retailers, I think in the UK, I think you have a couple of them, especially Octopus is pretty successful. So how are you seeing actually consumers embracing that? And also, as part of using that, maybe I think take also a combination, because Octopus also offers heat pumps to buy, to rent, in combination with solar storage. So how because I think the UK is somewhat pioneering in this field. So how do you see the dynamic, and how open are people for this?
I think it's largely driven by the assets that people have, and for different assets, there's different levels of maturity. So you mentioned heat pumps. Obviously, for heating in the sort of the north of Europe in the winter, it doesn't correlate particularly well with solar, but it's a way of electrifying consumption. That doesn't lend itself to control or optimizing self-consumption, whereas what we're seeing much more for EVs is both smart charging is becoming the norm. It's the standard. Having a controllable charge point or the vehicle itself driving when it's charging, using that to follow market prices and market excess. And EV owners in particular are willing to give up some element of control to retailers and optimizers, as long as their parameters are met. So if you're charging overnight for 2 hours, it doesn't matter which 2 hours, as long as when you wake up in the morning, the car is charged. You also have opportunities, as has been mentioned, for solar carports. If you can look at how to optimize the use of solar for EV charging during the middle of the day, then that's another advantage where you can coordinate, and handing over control to either the site operator or the retailer to charge the car at the optimal times is something that people have become very comfortable with very quickly. Within heating or for other assets, it's a little bit further behind, but we're starting to see signs of optimizing heat pumps being a growth market, and I expect that's going to continue.
Okay, let's talk a little bit also about this mandatory topic, because I think that could be huge. Jan, you showed actually the potential that you've modeled. So the question is still, how likely is it, and there is a clear time plan, that member states will really implement the energy performance of the buildings directive as they should? I think it was, I believe, yesterday or the day before that I read in Politico that the Commission is about to sue 26 member states for not implementing the renewable energy directive. So what can we expect here?
Yeah, so implementation is always patchy. So they will implement some parts of the file, and then others will have to wait a few years. So we will expect some delays in certain countries. And this is particularly relevant where legislation is unclear. In this case, the mandate is pretty clear. It's pretty straightforward. Where we do expect the member states need time to define the details, and giving them a 1.5 year deadline, with maybe potentially elections in between, the work on a new topic, that can be a bit short. Therefore, I would expect a slight deviation from the timeline. Quite critical as well the exemption criteria that they will choose, for example, with regards to payback times or statistical suitability of the installation. That is something we need to take a close look on. And then maybe the third element to keep an eye on is are the enabling measures. With that, I mean, not only support schemes are of course also important, but also, for example, do you open up the mandate for third-party investors? Basically, making it not a mandate to install a PV installation, but a mandate to make your roof available to a third-party investor. And this is one enabling measure that really can facilitate the adoption from citizens, because they don't have to take the investment anymore. They just there's a part of their roof which is unused anyway, and they will have to make it usable for a different purpose. And then the second enabling measures, which can be a game changer, is to have publicly available platforms with the available roofs that are for PV development. So you can imagine that, as you have for public procurement procedures at the moment, public authorities must make this publicly available and to allow for bids on projects. And this way, whenever there's a PV installation that is planned for, let's say, 2027 or 2028, the company puts this on the platform, and then PV developers can bid on that platform. And that really can facilitate access to customers, and for the PV companies and for the building owners, it of course enables competition between different developers, leading to increases in quality and decreases of costs, most likely. So I'd say these are the conditions that play into this. But of course, political dynamics, you will have a different law if it's a green government than if it's a conservative or even populist government.
But what do you feel as a general trend? So I think do rather governments in general see this as an opportunity or a burden? I found it really interesting, and I didn't read actually too much about that because maybe it's a sensitive topic. Israel, in a state of war at the moment, recently implemented mandatory solar for two reasons: energy security and cost. So how do national governments see mandatory solar with this regard, in this regard also, or do they understand actually also what it could be?
Mm-hmm. So Israel is a nice example, but also the UK. I mean, John, maybe you can comment on this, but what I get the impression from the press that I'm reading is that the UK government is seeing this as an opportunity to lower energy bills and to make people independent of higher and volatile electricity prices. In the EU, I see a bit more worrying trends. So in France, for example, the government is walking down a bit on their existing mandate, the solar standard that they already have, by lowering, for example, the requirements on parking lots. That's what happened just a few months ago. In Germany, the coalition treaty foresees to actually to maximize the exemption scope in the mandate, so to make use of the exemptions that are out there. We're seeing a similar discussion in the Netherlands, which of course has a very particular situation with a lot of congestion and a huge impact on state budgets from net metering. I would be a bit cautious on, of course, an energy security rationale can support here, but also here it's a bit of a mixed picture. We see that Ursula von der Leyen signs huge deals of buying gas from the United States, and there are still some concerns about how the blackout really didn't help the image that PV is a supporting element on power grids, even though it is and it can be, but that's not necessarily how politicians are seeing it. So I'm afraid that there will be some political campaigns that need to happen to feed in some of the more positive views to the two governments.
Let's maybe stay on the residential side and maybe also think about the consumer, the citizen a bit. I think John showed it in one of the graphs, and Luis also mentioned this topic of balcony solar. I find it a really interesting one because this goes really through the roof, right? So I think there's no, in Germany, I believe you had the official numbers say now actually that by June, 1 million systems were installed. Probably it's many, many more, but because a lot of people are simply not registering their systems, you can simply plug it in. And I think the systems can be up to 2 kilowatts. It's accessible, so while you can only feed in 800 watt at the same time. But nevertheless, I feel the people want it. They want to have it maybe easier. They want to have it cheaper. But you see also people actually who have their own houses put it on the garage rather than going maybe for the complicated version, as long maybe as they don't have a heat pump and an EV or so. But how can we actually utilize and actually embrace that willingness? Because apparently it's not as simple as some people might take from the numbers, that the residential or the market is stagnating or slightly decreasing. People are interested actually in sustainable electricity generation or self-sufficiency. So maybe everyone. How can we actually kind of, or what's needed to kind of push that and help that maybe move, we can call it almost movement. I don't know who wants first.
Michael, let me come in quickly. I think you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
I think a very important first step is the repetition of the message and the let's say advertisement, whether we want to do it on, I don't know, like a TikTok or on our Disney Plus or whatever. It's very interesting when I turn on my Disney Plus, I see advertisements on Bundeswehr, right, the military and all. But I don't see, enough advertisements or awareness raising on, like, let's say, balcony PV here, right? So this is important. And again, as I said, I think we should also keep repeating to all the average citizens here how lucrative a small balcony PV with regard to the money saved, right? Every kilowatt installed in a year reduced their costs a lot. Electricity costs a lot in the case of Germany, for example. This needs to be repeated and repeated and repeated constantly. This is at least what I think.
Yeah, and it's not only about balcony solar. It's about, of course, the whole topic of residential distributed solar. Actually, how can we push that? And actually, it's also maybe about, you have to think about now, maybe if incentives go down, also about customer acquisition cost. I think there are some big installation companies also where you can see quite some advertisement actually in Germany here, from, if you mention NPAL, for example. So I think you can see these ads online almost everywhere. So what needs to be done here to get things moving again?
I would support the point that Jan made earlier, that for me it's less at this stage about pushing solar onto consumers, but consumers pulling, having that demand that's driven by increased electrification. So if their consumption goes up, if their demand goes up, the benefit for self-consumption of having their solar goes hand in hand. But it's the change in the lifestyle, it's the electrification of transport, electrification of heat and other assets that I think would really drive that pull from the consumer to say, now my consumption's higher, how can I reduce the running costs?
Maybe if I can jump in on this, market numbers for EVs are still picking up, so we're still seeing a growth in the EV market, and we are also going to see with the phase out of fossil fuel boilers, which is certainly going to come. We're seeing France lowering their primary energy factor, which basically determines the prices for electricity versus gas. We're also seeing the requirements in Germany. So as soon as you have these two appliances, the electricity from a balcony PV installation will simply evaporate with the consumption of these devices. So and then citizens will see they have this really clean electricity and they have these possibilities what self-consumption can do. So I'm optimistic that a lot of them will then upgrade to a residential PV installation. Voila.
Michael, you're mute, Michael, I think.
My computer is somehow disconnected. Okay, so I think we're sort of coming to an end. So let's maybe catch up. So I think there's 2 points we have to discuss. I think it's not about, so we talked about push, pull, but let's once again talk about maybe technology. So what technology or innovation do you think can be a game changer for residential and C&I to bring things maybe to the next level? Or do we have just everything? Because it looked pretty fancy what Luis showed with his all-in-one tool. So maybe just a quick round. What do you think?
So Michael, I mean, innovation, I mean, it will always continue, and specifically speaking from the Sigenergy point of view, this is what we plan to do. We plan to keep innovating. We plan to keep integrating PV and storage solutions with technology that is now available in the market. I personally see a couple of trends that is what's bringing the attention of homeowners. Homeowners want technology that can allow them to see and manage their energy. That data visualization, anything that can give you access to and can show you in a simple way how you are behaving from an energy point of view, that is a plus. So that's definitely a direction. So everything that has to do with smart loads controlling and giving specific time frames of use for your loads, as well as your charging your battery, that's also a direction. Better management of your excess energy, not wasting energy, and optimizing your energy uses, that's definitely a direction as well. Of course, fully integrated solutions. We can't talk anymore about a battery system, a PV system, an EV charger, and everything needs to speak together. Like everything has to be fully integrated, because that's the only way to do a proper or a true integration. Okay, so you can have a battery system and an EV charger in parallel doing their thing. So these two, they need to be integrated. And then future-proof hardware, because specifically in this sector, in this industry where we are, technology moves quite fast. Like in 2-3 years, technology that you had initially might seem obsolete. So future-proofing your hardware, future-proofing your installation to what's coming next is definitely something that prosumers are looking into. I'll give you a very good example. Bidirectional charging, or V2X. This is new for everyone. This is new for homeowners. This is new for charger manufacturers. This is new for electrical vehicle manufacturers. So systems that can give you, or set you ready to when that technology is more mature, it's definitely a direction that prosumers would like manufacturers to take.
Okay. Who else?
Maybe I take the floor. I think the key innovation will be making the construction process of rooftop PV installations faster and cheaper, because I think it's 50% or even more of the installation of the cost of a rooftop PV installation goes into labor, and so if you are able to accelerate your installation, make it less labor intensive, standardize parts of it, integrate it into the construction process of the building, into the roof construction, or use the scaffolding of the building twice, so you don't have to do the scaffolding for the PV installation, or you do neighborhood approaches, installing the installation across similar types of buildings in let's say 10s, 20, 50s of buildings at the same time, then you really bring down the costs, which will then also improve the business case for rooftop PV even further.
Okay. Yeah, I've been personally always a fan of integration, so that solar becomes really part of the building skin. Unfortunately, we're somehow not getting there. So, but maybe with mandatory solar, I think that could give this another push. Anyone else actually who has an idea about some important lever that can boost growth?
So I'll go the other way and think about integration within the system, particularly a very digital system, one that is dominated by inverter-based technologies. We are going to need more grid-forming inverters. Most installed today are grid-following. I do question, I wonder how much that would be part of the residential and C&I proposition. But it would certainly either be a requirement at some stage, if it's not to limit the amount of inverter-based technologies that can be accommodated on the grid. And it may enable solar and hybrid installations to participate in more of the markets and more of the value streams for system stability that are going to become more and more important in the system.
Okay. Anyone else? Otherwise, I would say maybe...
Michael, just very briefly from installers, to repeat that, the installer feedback: bigger efficiency, smaller sizes, innovative interoperable solutions. That's my point. Sorry, back to you.
Okay, perfect. So I think then maybe, I don't know, maybe do another quick round. So everyone, one important regulatory measure you think is, or the key important regulatory measure you would like to see to bring the rooftop segment to the next level. So you just have to say basically one word or one sentence. I think we discussed many. I think the lobbyist first.
A mandate for electric vehicles and heat pumps, keeping it up, that the most efficient way to decarbonize, people will have to do it, and they have to do it now.
Okay. Industry, Luis?
I like Jan's comment, but I'm going to follow up with another one. If we are really true about making new builds home with renewable energy technology or solar specifically, those requirements need to be real requirements. It can't be just a tick in the box. Otherwise, there is no point of doing that.
Okay. John?
It's been said before, but interoperability is key. Thinking about the whole home, not just a collection of individual technologies, and how they communicate and work together. Okay.
Final words, Ali?
Don't forget canopies, car parks. It's not on the roof, but it's also very important. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Then I would like to say, first of all, thanks to everyone. I think many of you, I think everyone here is in Europe. I think it's summertime, holiday time. So thanks for coming and talking here, and also to all the attendees who joined during this summertime. That was great. Thanks a lot also to our sponsors. Thanks to the Taiyang team. And I just want to point to our next event that's in early September. So I think we are moving somewhere completely different. We will have a conference on cell and module production equipment and processing material conferences. This comes in the context that many countries try to become also resilient as they move towards solar. I think in particular India is here to mention, but the US was, and let's see how that is happening now. But there's quite some diversification going on, despite, of course, China staying the giant and a lot of products coming from there. So we will have all stakeholders or the key stakeholders in this field talking about the latest trends. And then we have also another event on September 8th that is a physical event. We will have on the day before the RE Plus trade show, that's the biggest show in the US, takes place, organize an event together with EUPD and RE Plus about solar made in USA. I think a lot of things have changed recently and not to the better, and we want to evaluate the situation and see if there's still a business case midterm and long term for at least some of the many projects that were announced regarding manufacturing in the US. And that's it from my side. Our publications can be downloaded free of charge on our website. We're coming out with a market survey on cell production this week. And yeah, that's it for the moment. Thanks to everyone. Have a nice day. Have a nice evening wherever you are. And see you soon again. Bye-bye.
Thank you, guys. Thanks.
Thank you. Bye-bye.